Welcome to the Phoenix Prosperity Podcast, where wealth meets legacy. Join your host, Tim Fergestad, as we explore the journeys of Phoenix's finest to success and beyond.
Hello, this is Tim Fergestad. Thank you for joining us. I'm very pleased to have Michael Wagman with me here today. Michael started out his journey in entrepreneurship at 25, became a millionaire before 30 through real estate investing. Now he travels the world full-time while still raising capital and operating the business remotely. Although we met in Phoenix, he is currently in Thailand. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So how long were you in Arizona before you got to realize your dream through real estate?
I actually moved to Phoenix in the very beginning of 2020, so that was interesting timing, right? I didn't even get to enjoy it that much before the world collapsed a bit, but I spent the better part of 3 years there before embarking on this adventure.
Okay, so what inspired this adventure or this lifestyle quest?
It's a really interesting question. I really like Phoenix a lot as a city. I think it actually offers solutions to a lot of what I'm looking for in a modern city. Originally being from California and then also living in Florida for a while, I think Phoenix is kind of the best of a lot of worlds. It's a clean city. You can get around it really fast. There's so much to do. There's so much nature. There's great food scene, music scene, all this kind of stuff. But I found that I was kind of lacking community there because as a 30-year-old, I was living in a big house in the suburbs by myself. And, that doesn't really make sense for the kind of lifestyle I was kind of leading and what I was looking for. And so eventually I just kind of realized that, I don't have to be here to run my business. And that's when the thought started percolating in my head about, I spend most of my days on Zoom regardless. I'm just talking to investors all day long or just sitting in my office, taking calls, and I could be doing that from anywhere. And that's really when I started sort of embracing the idea of, hey, maybe I should be on a beach in Thailand right now.
Okay, let's talk about how you got into the industry, the real estate space.
Yeah. So I used to work in high tech as a sales guy. Really only spent about 3 or 4 years in the corporate world before I just kind of knew it wasn't for me. I guess I had the fortune of realizing that really early. I don't like being told what to do, and I don't know where that comes from, but I like making decisions for myself and having full autonomy. So I moved to Florida in 2016, 2017. And I really wanted to be a house flipper. I had been watching too much HGTV at that time, and I said, I can do that. I could probably do that better than they can. And yeah, I bought my first house with all of my savings. I think it cost $66,000 for the whole house, and I paid cash for it. And yeah, I flipped it with all my own money, and I made a little bit of money, and it was just enough to sort of keep me on that path and fuel me into doing the next one. And then I ended up flipping more houses over the course of a few years.
So did you do it better than the guys on TV?
I think the end result was great, but I certainly learned that it is nothing like the TV shows. As far as budgets and profit, I made $13,000 in profit on the first flip when I was expecting 50 or 80 or whatever they show on the TV shows. It was nothing like that. And,
And how long did that take you?
Going 6 months.
Okay.
And then the second one, I took all the profit from the first one. I put that into the second one. I think on the second one, I made about 25, 30 grand profit. So all in all, I had like, $50,000 profit year. It's 6 months to do each property. But it's like, wow, if you're going to make $40,000 or $50,000 in 2 paychecks, you might as well work a regular job because, the math wasn't mathing at that point. But
well, you don't have somebody telling you what to do.
I didn't. I could wake up whenever I want, and it launched me on this journey, which ended me up here. So I'm very grateful I stuck with it.
Excellent. So how did you pivot into multifamily from single family?
So I tried my hand at a lot of different kind of residential real estate investing. I tried wholesaling, I tried being a realtor. But eventually the smartest thing I did was house hacking. So I bought a 4-unit building in Florida, and I lived in one of the units, and I rented out the other 3. And I was just like, oh my God, my housing cost is gone. In fact, I'm making a little bit of money every month.
Right.
I need to do more of this, much more,
Right.
much more of this. And so I bought a couple more duplexes, and I had this plan to basically get up to 20 units through duplexes. Um, and I ended up having a conversation with a guy, and I told him my plan at the time. It's such a shame I don't remember this man's name to this day, but essentially he said, why are you going to buy 20 units? You could just buy a 20-unit building, or 20 duplexes, or 10
Right.
duplexes, and you could just buy a 20-unit building. And I was like, whoa, I had never thought of that before.
Can I do that?
My brain just started exploding. And then as I read more books and started to, delving into the world of multifamily, I realized, why would I buy 20 units when I could buy 100 units? And
Right.
then that led us to where we are now.
That was a little bit of a eureka moment for me as well, because I always thought that they were just like big corporate industrial owners of all the big apartment communities and stuff. I didn't know that private investors that we could participate in that.
Yeah, it's certainly not something that, you grow up thinking of as common knowledge, or even something that's just attainable, right? Like, if one person owns one house, why would one person own 100 apartment unit complex? And it's not like that. It's a team effort, and a lot of people can own it together.
Right. Right. So leaving your job for that sounds kind of risky to go put all your money into one project. How would you describe your appetite for risk, and how has it changed over time?
That is a really interesting question, and I think maybe something I don't know if I'd call this a skill or a talent, but it's certainly something that maybe I have more than other people, is that I do make decisions quickly, and when I make them, I stick to them. So I don't know if at that time when I was 25, I really truly understood the risk of falling flat on my face and losing everything I had. I just made the decision and went for it. So call it, naivety or stubborn ignorance or whatever at,
Or also
25.
freedom, right?
Yeah,
Freedom to not have something to lose, or family to have to support. And
that's true. Yeah, if I was, married and had a bunch of kids, that maybe would be a lot harder decision to come by. Or if I'd been, working my way up the corporate ladder for 15 years, maybe that would be a harder thing to leave.
right.
But I just knew somewhere in my bones that this is what I wanted to do, and I went for it.
Any setbacks along the way?
Certainly, flipping is not nearly as glamorous as it seems. I learned pretty quickly that in order to make any sort of decent living from flipping, you have to be doing it at scale. Um, and that involves borrowing people's money, and that can be stressful. But truly, I think at the end of the day, another eureka aha moment for me was the difference between the valuation of commercial real estate and the valuation of residential real estate. And while residential real estate can have great profit margins, it's not predictable. It's based on a lot of emotion and speculation, and just whatever people feel like the market is doing right now, and really, whatever people are willing to pay for it. And we're still in just a very, very wild real estate market right now, with, low inventory and high interest rates. And,
Right.
it's very stressful. And on the last flip I ever did, I watched about 6 figures worth of profit turn into about $25,000-$30,000 worth of profit over the course of like 8 months. I got a full price offer on day one, and the realtor who was representing the buyer was brand new, didn't know how to condition their buyer about inspection reports and all these kinds of things, and the buyer backed out. Um, And then I just had to keep lowering the price and lowering the price and lowering the price and lowering the price. And it was probably almost, I think it was over 12 months from the time I bought it to the time I actually closed, and I watched all that profit disappear. Um, and that was kind of a hard lesson to learn about flipping, but there was a silver lining. The silver lining there was that I owned the property for over a year, so I had no I had no short-term capital gains on that sale.
Well played, Michael.
Yeah, totally intentional. Um, and I actually recently did the math on that property too. I sold it in 2018 for $285,000, and I made, 25, 30 grand of profit. It's worth about 500 today, right? And so if I had
Right.
just kept it and rented it out, oh man, I'd be looking back as a happy
Right.
person.
That's
Yeah.
that's actually a common theme when I talk to people who have been successful in real estate or have just some real estate in their portfolio. And ask them about it, what would they do differently? And they'd say, I would never have sold anything. I would.
Yeah.
They all regret. They also always thought that, not that they were trying to time the market, but they thought they had a good run and things were good. And that's how you build wealth in real estate is you buy it and hold it and let it cash flow and just do cash out refis or whatever. That's a big play that a lot of people, I think, we're very transactional, like flipping when you start off and the velocity of capital and so forth. But once you start investing instead of actually working, I think the long-term play is definitely where it's at.
Exactly. And cash flow is really interesting because people are, looking for that number, the 8, 9, 10, 11% cash flow. And that's wonderful, but that's wonderful if you have 2 million, 3 million, $4 million and you're making, hundreds of thousands of dollars passively each year. But, to build real wealth in this industry, even if the property cash flows a little bit, it's just a waiting game. The cash flow
Right.
is just sort of the security barrier until you can actually build the wealth through appreciation.
Right. Good point. So, what's an underrated skill or habit that has been pivotal to your success, Michael? This is one of the common questions I like to ask people who particularly in the investment space.
Yeah. Underrated skill. So I
Or
like
habit.
to say,
Yeah.
I like to say that I'm pretty good at one thing and one thing only. And that's generally just knowing what needs to happen, but also being honest with myself about whether or not I'm actually going to do that thing. I have terrible ADHD. I've had it my whole life. I would admittedly describe myself as very naturally lazy. I try like to sit around the house and read books and just be comfy at all times. And I don't want to say that I have a bad work ethic, but I do say that, like, if I know that I'm not motivated to do that thing, the chances of me doing that thing are pretty low. And so one underrated skill is just knowing when I am and am not gonna be able to make myself do something, but I still know that that thing needs to get done. So I've been very efficient at finding business partners, hiring assistants, hiring marketing teams to make sure that all of the pieces of the puzzle are running to their best ability,
Nice.
whether or not I'm the one doing them.
Right. There's some gold there. Know thyself is
Yeah,
one.
notice.
And then the power of delegating for sure.
Yeah.
Particularly when whether or not you can do it or no, you don't want to do it, but somebody else can do it faster and better often.
Absolutely. It's like I know how I learned this in the beginning when I was flipping houses. I learned how to lay tile, and then, I didn't know anything, but the first flip I ever did was just me and one handyman just by ourselves because I couldn't afford a contractor. And so I was in that house in Florida in the summer with no AC laying tile. And I said, man, as soon as I can afford to never do this again, I am never doing this
Right.
again.
Right. So in terms of building your team, what sort of traits do you prioritize nowadays?
Well, the company is pretty small. So Nimble Capital is really just me and Mike. And we don't have any intention of being some sort of huge organization with a bunch of
Right.
employees and payroll and stuff. Like we do this because we love it and we want the lifestyle. Like I travel full time. He gets to spend all his time with his wife and his kids, and now he's got two
Same
puppies.
here. And that's part of the name, right?
Yeah, we've got to stay nimble about these things, right? So, as far as the organization is concerned, we outsource almost everything possible, right? The property management is outsourced, the marketing, we have a team of people, a company working for us, as opposed to, hiring an in-house social media person or anything like that. And then I have one assistant who does all my cold calling. Um, because I know I'm not going to make myself do cold calling. I put in my hours in the beginning of my career, and I'm not going to make myself do that anymore.
Right. Okay. So interesting. So let's talk a little bit more about your lifestyle, right? And what does a typical day look like for you now? And how do you balance work with personal life, particularly when you're in different parts of the globe?
Yeah. So I'm doing something a little crazy right now, which is that every single month I'm in a different country. So last month I was in Vietnam, right now in Thailand, next month I'm going to be in Japan. And I will willingly admit that it's a bit too fast paced to maintain some sense of balance, because just about the time when you get really used to a place, you're up
Okay.
and moving to the next one, right?
Okay.
But I try to do a lot of little things to maintain my sense of sort of security and stability. So I keep my morning routine as diligently as I can, given that time zones are usually messing with my sleep or my work hours. But I have to go to the gym. I have to have my coffee. I have to do some reading and some reflection. All of these kinds of things. A really good book, if your viewers have never read it, is called Miracle Morning.
Hal
I,
Elrod.
yeah, how Rod. And there are some woo woo or shishi things in that book that maybe I don't follow to the letter, but as a general principle of a way to structure your morning to have the most productive day possible, I still try to abide by that as much as I can. Um,
I think it's
I-
probably even extra important considering the variables of travel,
yeah.
right?
And so to answer your question, is I usually, in every country I go to, there's a co-working space that I try to spend a lot of time in. Um, but every day looks a little bit different, right? Like I was at the Golden Temple of Chiang Mai just 2 days ago, and
Oh wow.
3 weeks ago I was on a beach in Da Nang, and it's a very fun and exciting life, but I have to try and find a balance between getting work done and also experiencing life.
And how long have you been doing it?
Now we're about 10 months in,
Okay.
10 and a half
And
months.
it's still a struggle to find that balance, but things are going well.
Uh, yes and no. I would say it was a lot easier when I was in South America and Europe. The time zone is much more reasonable. But here in Asia, in order to sort of comply with or be on the same schedule as American working hours, it means I'm working either late at night or very early in the morning. And so kind of adopted a split schedule where I work first thing when I wake up and then right before I go to bed. And then the middle of my day is kind of free. But
Is it hard to
we'll
do
make it
when you're
work.
tired? To do the cognitive lifting?
A little bit. Well, I adjust for the sake of the business, and I made all these choices at the end of the day, right? I'm here voluntarily, so um, got to make it work.
Right. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
You mentioned Miracle Morning. Is there any other sort of book or podcast or mentor that significantly influenced your outlook on health, wealth, or success?
Recently,
Okay.
the most fantastic book that I've read that really opened my mind a lot. And I was very fortunate to actually have the opportunity to hear this author presenting the book information
Okay.
to GoBundance before the book actually came out. And just listening to him talk about the principles of the book was things that somehow I'd always subconsciously known or internalized, but hearing somebody put words to it, I mean, my
Right.
brain was just absolutely exploding. And the book is 10x is better than 2x,
Okay. Yep.
by Dr. Ben Hardy.
Yep.
And he's got a bunch of great books, Gain in the Gap, Who Not How, but this one it just really, and at the end of the day, you could kind of summarize this book down to the 80-20 principle. But it's just so much more than that in the way that he describes it, and the way that he
Right.
makes you think about what are the things in your life that you are currently doing that you really don't need to be doing, and that if you just focused on these other things, you'd probably put your life in a much faster trajectory towards where you want to go.
Right. I agree. I think Benjamin Hardy's got a lot of great material out there, and he keeps his books kind of build on themselves too, right? And
Absolutely.
it's a really good sort of internal look, or he sort of prompts you to look at who you need to become, your future self, to right. It's like lottery winners, right? And they win the lottery and then they lose it because they didn't become the person that can handle that and can do the stuff they want to do. So you have to sort of become the person that, right, to put in the systems to have that life.
Correct. Yeah. And that's really all this book is about is, you're probably doing a whole bunch of things right now that you just don't need to be doing at all. And you need to be, focusing on these things to get you where you want to go.
Right. We also talked about, I mentioned systems, and that's something that you're a big fan of. Do you want to talk about a little bit more about how you use those to achieve what you've done?
Yeah. So essentially the systems of my business look like this. And I'll speak specifically to my role in the business because I do have a business partner who does a lot of heavy lifting in regards to the actual management of the properties and the asset management and acquisition side. But me, as it relates to sort of marketing and capital raising, um, like I said, I knew I wasn't going to be the social media guy, although I've kind of stepped into that a little bit now as I've started traveling more.
You have some beautiful places you can clearly share
Yeah,
that
I
gets
do.
attention.
I've started, but for the last, I would say 6 or 7 years of my life, I've been really social media averse. I didn't have Facebook or Instagram or any of that stuff for a long time. I had to get it back for the business purposes. Um, And so the first system was hiring a marketing company who's, making sure that we are coming up with creatives, running ads, posting them on Facebook and Instagram. And then, other systems we need once these leads come in, we need a place to actually interact with them. So we have CRM. Um, Ideally, these leads are prompted initially to just book a call straight into my calendar. That's the most ideal situation where they just see the ad, they're interested, and they just book a call right into my calendar, and then I call them.
Right.
But in case they don't do that, we have an overflow of leads who've expressed their interest in our offering, but have not, I guess, booked a call with me. So how are we contacting those leads? Well, I
Right.
knew I wasn't going to cold call them, so I hired an assistant who her only job is to call down the list and make sure these people get contacted in regards to their interest in our offering and see if she can set up a call with me. Um, and then, once we have a call with these people. If they're interested in investing, we have a third platform, our investor portal, where they can go access the documents and everything like that. So it's very systematized, as opposed to, me by myself when I was flipping houses and just kind of doing everything willy-nilly and occasional spreadsheet here and there. We're utilizing a very sort of formalized process through the journey from someone just hanging out on the street to becoming an investor of ours.
Right. Right. Um, okay. I a lot of that rings true for me as well. So I appreciate the insights for that. It's that's the battle for me right now is trying to set up systems and find people like your cold caller and stuff that are not just reliable but personable and that's a big job, right? For something that they're the face of the company, the very first interaction, if you
Right.
will, and important to get them trained up right. And once you do, though, boom, that's one less thing you have to it's on your plate.
Yeah. Well, and it's a constant thing as well. Like we invest in our assistant as well. So whether it comes to sales trainings and all sorts of things, our assistant is based in the Philippines, but a lot of virtual assistants are based in Mexico, the Philippines, other places where sometimes they have wonderful English, sometimes the English is not the best, but really it's just about making sure that sales skills are irregardless of language, right? Sales skills are confidence and trust building and rapport building and all this kind
Right.
of stuff. So, all of that can be taught. And whether it's by me or by a course that I purchased for her or whatever, we're doing our best to make sure that she has all of the tools at her disposal to be successful at her job.
Okay. Excellent. This is fascinating business. I love hearing about your systems and the underlying processes you guys have built. This is the Phoenix Prosperity Podcast. So it sounds like things are going well for you. I'd like to talk about a little bit about your personal and professional goals for keeping that prosperity moving forward, right? What sort of are you putting everything back in the business? How are you planning for the future? Do you have any legacy plans?
Yes, yes, certainly. My life is very much in flux at the moment. I'm, traveling the world with my girlfriend and a bunch of friends. But obviously that won't last forever. So I'll probably be back in the US for at least 3 or 4 months at the end of this year, but with the goal of maintaining travel as a lifestyle in a much more sustainable way. So as opposed to doing one country every month, maybe I'll go to a country and stay there for 3 months at a time, and then on weekend I'll take a trip here, take a trip there. That seems like a much more sustainable way for me to approach this lifestyle. And as far as prosperity and where my cash is going right now, the truth is that it's actually a lot more cost effective to live in other countries than the US. I think it costs me about $1 per Uber to get anywhere I want here. And um, rent in some of these countries is like 200-300 bucks. It makes a lot of sense for people who can or have the willingness to adopt this lifestyle. I mean, the cost of
Right.
living in the US is absolutely outrageous right now, and it's pretty much only going to get worse as far as I can tell. Um, things are very much in flux right now in the real estate markets. We've been in a holding pattern for quite a while with interest rates and pricing, and this is an election year, so who knows? Regardless of politics, I would say hopefully something is likely to shake up the industry, and I would hope in a good way, but who knows? It could be in a bad way as well. Um, so for now, our goals are continue acquiring assets where the deal makes sense, regardless of what market we're in. So, our price is our price. If it makes sense at this point in time with whatever interest rate we can get, that's
Right.
how much money we can offer in order to achieve, cash flow and an appreciating return for our investors. I'd say that there probably has been some adjustment to expectations, right? Because people were getting these crazy returns in 2020 and 2021, 2022, and we're just not in that market anymore, right? And
Right.
at this point, as long as your deal isn't cash flow negative and you can maintain, the occupancy, I would say you're gonna be fine. Just like we said earlier, just hold on to it. Just keep on hanging on. It'll get better
Right.
eventually, right? But all the deals that we have going at the moment are in healthy enough shape. Um, and yeah, we'll just keep on hanging on to them. And if it's time to exit, we'll jump on the opportunity. And if it's not, we'll just keep on hanging on to them and watch the cash flow keep increasing. My personal goal really is, I'm not in this to like make, $80 million and be so rich and all this kind of stuff. Like I have an exit number of, if I was making probably somewhere between 200 and 500K passively a year, that's probably more money than I could ever spend realistically. And if I maybe if I have a family and stuff, that number would change. But that's so much money. I could do everything I ever wanted with that money. So we'll just keep building it, and we'll use the wealth to the appreciation wealth to keep rolling into better assets and building up the passive income and until it gets there. And it's a very predictable formula with multifamily investing, that if you basically double your money every 5 years, you will get there.
Right.
Just continue being smart and continue investing.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you. So, what do you wish you knew about building wealth and success earlier in your career? Now that you're old and all done.
Yeah, now that I'm old and all done. Yeah. I mean, the example we spoke about earlier with the houses that I flipped and sold. I mean, I can't. If I had just never sold anything, I'd probably be there already. Realistically, if I had just had the patience. Hell, back in, shoot, when was it? Back in like 2016, I think I had like 6 Bitcoins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't make any money on that, but if I had only known, right? It's just, that's how investing works. When you're younger and patient, when you just want it now, you want that exit now, you that payout now, but it doesn't happen now, especially not with real estate. It's always 3 to 5 years down the pipeline when you look back and you're like, that was a good decision.
Okay, so that's good advice. Good advice to someone aiming to achieve similar results. So, for our listeners who want to learn more about you or connect, where can they find you?
So, we're at Nimble Capital Group on Instagram, and I have now becoming sort of an aspiring travel influencer, although it's not going. I mean, I only started posting content about 2 months ago, so we'll see. But if you'd like to see what I'm doing in my travels, you can follow me at michael.d.wagman at Instagram or on Instagram. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. You can find me there. And then our just company's website is nimblecapitalgroup.com.
All right. Excellent. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Michael, for joining me today. We appreciate you sharing your adventures and your insights into success. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Inspired by our guests? Visit phoenixprosperitypodcast.com/guest and join us on the show and share your success story with Tim. The spotlight awaits.